About 3:30 in the morning. I'm trying to figure out what to draw for the past day and a half. It's really a bummer because my intention had been to film a whole bunch of videos and just get a lot done for the channel. Still intend to do that, but figured I might as well make a video. Hopefully encourage people, you know, when you run the times where you just don't know what to do. Just start. Like, definitely don't do what I did and just, you know, not draw anything. I got a video, well, several actually, that I want to film, talking about, you know, various things about mecha design. The video I had in mind was essentially talking about why military machinery is named the way it is, you know, the different designations, you know, what does a class mean, what is a ship type, things like that. And for some reason, I was just hitting a wall. It was really strange. I was writing out details I wanted to remember, so as I'm talking, I basically just have some, you know, waypoints or, you know, nav points on a map. If you think about it, think of it like a map. You know, this is where we want to go. I gotta remember to hit these stops along the way, so I don't forget anything. Yeah, I think I was overthinking it. That happens a lot, you know. So I thought, well, should be pretty real with people. Pardon me. Just encourage people to, you know, if you're struggling with, there's a project you want to work on, or there's an idea you have and you're trying to get it completed, but you're also struggling with where to start, and you know, don't feel alone. It's normal. Sometimes you would wonder if you ever get the projects off the ground, but you will. It's part of the process. It can be really frustrating. You know, artist block, writer's block. I'm sure musicians for their art discipline have a term for it. I even had a plan on what to do whenever I run into that, and it was just basically start writing about other things, drawing other things. And what I didn't think about was film a video and talk about the fact that I'm stuck. You know, because a lot of times we'll see, you know, the end product of a process, right? You know, the end picture, or the painting, the book. And I always love the behind the scenes. I think we all have an interest in, or a lot of us have an interest in the behind the scenes kind of you know, material, to see how something was produced or what the process was. And it's always nice to see, because it gives you an insight into what had to happen in order for, you know, a story or a project to get created. And it's exciting to see. It's also helpful for the rest of us. You know, it's encouraging. I always really like those stories that, you know, where you hear an artist talk about, yeah, we were just stuck with this idea, we didn't know what to do, and here's the solution we came up with. And you know, I just thought, oh, I wish artists would share the stories more often. And boy, here I am. It's pretty hypocritical on one end, but you know, I guess ironic on others, or maybe ironic's not the right word, but here I am struggling with this, and I'm like, boy, artists should share more of it. So yeah, hypocritical would be the right word. Pardon me as I yawn. So I think, yeah, it helps to share it. You know, that way people don't feel alone or feel like, you know, I'm the only one struggling with this. It's like, you know, well, definitely don't feel alone. You're not. Yeah, I was really excited to want to share that whole process just to give people, you know, more of an understanding of why military machinery is called what it's called, so people can use that in their mecha designs or their world building. You know, if they're exploring the lore of a universe, you know, they can better understand that. Because there's quite a few universes out there pretty popular right now. Like you got Warhammer 40K. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. BattleTech's another one. Star Citizen is very popular. Of course, you got the games that are trending too, like you know, Ark Hunters, Battlefield 6. That's got some lore in it. I mean, it's a really short campaign, but you know, pretty cool. But the legacy stuff, you know, you get into like Star Trek and Babylon 5. Although you don't see a whole lot about people talking about, you know, the ships in Babylon 5. Mostly centered around like Star Trek. There's been some stuff around the Expanse. Yeah. There's also a lot of stuff, you know, ground vehicles and whatnot. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out there. I was excited to start it, and I didn't know where to start. My problem was I didn't start. You know. So on one hand, it's good because it was a test, and you know, my usual thing, and I think it's, you know, it seems probably normal. You hear it from a lot of artists. You know, you just kind of put the pen down. Okay, well, I messed up again, and might not go back to it for a while. And you know, I'll just speak about me personally. I've always struggled with that. You know, the failure part, right? You know, you fail, you fall down, you fail at something. It's like, oh man, you know, another one to add to the list. But you know, life's like that. You have ups and downs, victories and failures. But something to, you know, think about. And I've been working really hard to change this in my own thinking. Is when you get a failure, you know, or a mistake, it's an opportunity to learn. You know, there's always lessons that we can learn, and you know, we can't choose. We don't get to choose the things that happen to us externally, but we can certainly choose how we decide to react to them. You know, and we can apply that to, you know, the things that happen internally. A lot of Like I love art. Love the creativity of it. I love just seeing what people create and you know, worlds we can dive into. You know, the everything from the fantastical to, you know, things that are pretty grounded. And it's always really cool to see what worlds, you know, people will create, you know, places we can explore. But yeah, I used to be, before I joined the military, the U.S. Navy, I was pretty organized, pretty detail oriented. Got bored pretty easily, you know, in school. Poor teacher, I'd be drawing all the time. Poor teachers would just, you know, love me as a student. That's what they told me. They said it just pained them that I couldn't focus on my studies. But the truth was, you know, back then when I went to school, which was pre-internet, and yeah, we would just kind of accept things the way they were. There wasn't a whole lot of understanding about just kind of different methods of learning, and that because my brother and my sister and I, we were all pretty learned kids. We loved to read, so we read a lot growing up, even as children. And by the time that we got to high school, we had read a lot of things that they wanted us to study, so we were bored out of our minds, you know. And you know, it's kind of one of the negatives of everybody has to learn the same way. I mean, you know, we understand why they do it. You know, you got a whole bunch of kids in a classroom, and you gotta get those lessons out. You know, you gotta teach. So nothing against teachers. We had some awesome teachers, and you know, they did the best with what they had and with what was known at the time. And sorry, I had to look and see if I was even drawing in frame. that would have sucked. I'm just drawing, just randomly sketching and drawing a city. At least I think it's a city. This could be a railroad here, or like a rail line. Should be kind of cool. Yeah, this is what I should have done before. I should have just drawn this and then, or just sketch. I'm really learning a lot of lessons too. There was a time period where I put my art down, and actually I should back up and finish what I was saying before. So joined the Navy, and was very detail oriented. You know, love the organization and kind of, you know, attention to detail and stuff like that. Which would be no surprise to my friends. But yeah, I got through boot camp. You know, that was fun. I could not wait to get yelled at, you know. Because that's what, you know, you join the military, that's the experience you're like, man, I've heard these stories from my grandfather, my dad, you know, other veterans. I forgot to mention that I'm fourth generation Navy. Yeah, my dad he did 20 years during the Cold War as a submariner. He's second generation submariner in our family that we know of. And so, our family and, us kids, my brother and sister, all we knew was the Navy. We just military, that was it. Grew up in military bases, every 3 to 4, 3 years. Every 3 years you'd move. We were kind of fortunate because we'd move from Groton, Connecticut, the sub base out there, to Bangor, Washington, that sub base. Back before it was, I think they merged a bunch of bases together. I think it's like Puget Sound base or something. And so, that's pretty much all we knew. So when I graduated high school, that's what I wanted to go do, because I needed to do something with my life. I was like, man, I graduated when I was 19. Had to repeat kindergarten because I had some trouble there, mostly learning kind of stuff. And then I repeated 10th grade because I foolishly thought, well, I wonder what it's like to skip school, because I was never one of those kids to do that. I was always the art kid in the hoodie, in the back, just, drawing and minding my own business. And so, yeah, that was don't ever do that. It's it's stupid. It's not a good thing to do. Had a chance to, I had a counselor. Let me back that up. So I did that when we were stationed in Washington State at Bangor, Washington, or Bangor sub base. And when we got transferred out to Groton, Connecticut, the school counselor there said, well, I could move you on to 10th grade, but you really don't have enough points. And he goes, I'd feel bad. I'd feel like I was lying to you if I said that, you'd be prepared. And, the way I was raised, I was like, I can't do that. It's consequence of my actions. I made a poor choice, and now I gotta, gotta own it and move forward. It's like Jocko Willink says, extreme ownership, own your mistakes and move forward from there. I mean, that's how a lot of our generation was, really raised, Gen X and whatnot. And so I don't know why I destroyed that thing. I like battle damage and rubble and ruin stuff. That's fun. So maybe this is old. Like, they're just breaking it down. So I repeated 10th grade, and then so that's why I graduated at 19. So Dad retired out of the Navy. We moved back here to Oregon, which is where most of our family is. When you're military dependent, one of the things that you'll find if you talk to they call them military brats, right? Military kids and dependents, is that if you ask them, hey, what's your home state? Will usually look at you with a look like, well, we don't have one. And that usually confounds everybody. They're like, what do you mean you don't have one? It's like, oh, we don't have a home state. We grew up everywhere. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to join up in the military, or specifically the Navy, was I miss moving. Been in Oregon, after I got out of the Navy, I've been in Oregon about 30 some odd years. It's weird. I don't like being static so long. I appreciate my friends, and I love being around family, so I'm not going to disparage any friendships or any of that. In fact, my friends, it's funny, my friends sometimes are just like, man, you should travel. It's like, yeah, I know, I don't have the money, which I think we can all relate to right now. But So 19 rolls around, coming up toward graduation, which, boy, that senior year rolls by fast. If any of you are senior, you know what I'm talking about. So come up on graduation, and I was like, well, I need to get out on my own. And in the future, if anybody's ever listened to this from overseas, in America, traditionally, American kids, you know, once we graduate, we become adults. We want to move out and get in our own place, you know, and that's not always the case in every culture, but here in the U.S. it is. You know, it's, you know, independence is something we value a lot. But so I decided to join the Navy, and the funny thing was, my dad, after our senior party and we got back, my dad comes to pick me up and he goes, "Hey, I talked to the Navy recruiter." We were laughing because it was like, I go, "You know, that's funny, Dad. That's funny you mentioned that, because I was just thinking about, you know, I need to go down and sign up." So you know, before I did, I talked with my grandfather, my dad's dad, on his side, and he was a corpsman during the Korean War, and or, you know, here in the U.S. you'll hear us Americans just refer to it as, you know, Korea. Same thing with the Vietnam War. We'll say, you know, Vietnam or Korea. He was a corpsman on the USS Boxer, and during the war. And then Dad, of course, he started out on tin cans, which are destroyers, and he eventually went to nuclear power school, because my late father was very high intellect. You know, that was my late dad. I miss him a lot. I miss my grandfather. But, you know, being a Christian, I know that, you know, we're going to see each other again. And so, you know, he's, you know, like in the military, you know, we have a mission to complete here that, you know, God gives each of us, and, you know, it's that purpose. And so, you know, it brings comfort, but you still miss them, you know, especially Veterans Day, or, you know, the holidays and stuff like that. Yeah, but when they were still alive, it was fun, because they're, you know, after I joined, it was like 3 living generations. And my late grandfather, it was funny, he goes, "Well, the Navy wasn't a tradition until you joined." And I'm like, right on. You know? But so I go to join. I should be joining like a shipyard or something, or ships. Well, I'm talking about the Navy. I have no idea what these are. Oh well. Let's draw some other geometric shapes. So before I go to join, I talk with them, and so, you know, I wanted their advice and their wisdom. You know, these were men I looked up to, and, you know, they're my heroes growing up. It was cool as a kid. My brother and sister will attest to this too, because my dad and our godfather, who's known as Uncle Lenny. Shout out Uncle Lenny. Submarine community, especially during the Cold War, is very secretive. There's a lot of parallels between it and special operations and intelligence work. And, you know, there's this, you know, the special operations community operates a lot with submarines in the Navy. So it was cool growing up as kids, because, you know, Dad would deploy, and we wouldn't know when he was going to deploy until, you know, if I remember right, like a few days before, or actually I think it was the day before. And so we'd all wake up really, really early, and we'd go see, you know, the boat off. It was only, in the Navy, traditionally, there's only 2 kinds of ships you call a boat, because the Navy doesn't have boats. We have craft and ships. And it's the submarines and the carriers. I think everybody calls their ship a boat at some point. But yeah, so we go see them off, and you wouldn't know when they were coming back. And especially during the Cold War, there's always that possibility hanging in the back of your head that Cold War could go hot, everything could go nuclear, And we didn't, that cloud was hanging over our head, but we was just like, well, what do you can't do anything about it. Live life. It didn't mean you didn't care, that you weren't concerned about things. It was just like, well, you can either be stressed out about it, or you can, be thankful for the things you got and go about life as best you can. But sorry, I'm getting off track. So yeah, Dad. So I asked my grandfather and my dad. I said, "What advice do you have?" Grandpa said, "Don't be a corpsman," which is what he was. No disrespect to corpsmen, especially seeing what they do. When you need them, you're very appreciative. There's a joke about Motrin and whatnot, which is the only thing they're allowed to prescribe. So there's a joke. There's a joke among all of us who have served. It's like, oh, your leg's missing. Here, take 2 Motrin, you'll be fine. Some of the dark humor. But no, the Marines don't have their own medical staff, so they pull from the Navy. And I think my grandfather, with his experiences in Korea, which he did not talk about directly. I think there's once or twice I remember him talking about it, and that generation was very much like that. And you'd read between the lines, and I think from what I remember, he went out with the Marines, and because there were a lot of former Japanese Imperial Marine and Army units that were still active after World War II, because they didn't believe that Japan had surrendered. So Grandpa would talk about that, and he I don't think he ever wanted me to be in combat. I mean, no family does, right? When I joined, I think one of the other reasons was I wasn't small. So when I joined, I was 5'6" and 120 pounds. I was working out and whatnot. But, it's your grandfather, right? It's your brother and sister. It's your mom and dad. Everybody's proud you're serving and whatnot, but nobody wants you to get hurt. And it was peacetime when I was in. It was just like, back then the attitude was, hey, I'll do a stint. I might like it. I'll stay in longer. Minimum, do my 4 years, get out, go to college. GI Bill and whatnot. And then, so Dad and Grandpa both said, yeah, so don't be a corpsman. And then Dad and them both said, don't be a cook. So the galley's hell. And every person I talked to, they were like, yeah, don't, just, avoid that. So fortunately, when I went in, when I went to recruiter, I knew to get everything in writing, and to pick a rating. So in the Navy, your rating is, it'd be like the Army and the Marines and the Air Force, their MOS, your military occupational specialty. But the Navy's very traditional, in a lot of its naming conventions. So we just call it rating or rate. And so the recruiter laid all these things out. My dad's standing there. It was really funny. So I think the recruiter's face, he was just kind of like, man, I'm not going to get anything. I'm not going to be able to fill you know, whatever my billets are, I got to fill. But he laid all these out, and I'm looking out over the ratings, and me being a history nerd and loving military, you know, especially war history, I'm looking at the papers and, or the rating descriptions, and one of them says gunner's mate. And I looked at that and I asked the recruiter, I go, what's that? And one of the reasons why I was looking at it was it also came with the Navy College Fund, which was additional money on top of the GI Bill. And he said, oh, he goes, you get to shoot guns and missiles and blow things up. And I was like, oh, sign me up. 19-year-old kid coming in there, I get to blow things up and play a fire? Sure, I'm going to go do that. You know, Dad was chuckling and stuff like that. Because, the cool thing about what Dad was, you know, being on submarines, a lot of times he was Cobb, or chief of the boat. And we would get tours onto the submarines, which, if you guys ever get a chance to take a tour on a modern fast attack or one of the, you know, the bigger boomers, the boomers are the ballistic missile submarines, do that. And when you walk up to the ship, or though, you know, it's referred to as a boat in the Navy, when you walk up to the subs, realize that you're only seeing the top third of it. Those submarines, compared to like World War II, especially World War I, they're colossal in size compared to what, you know, they used to be. And they're impressive. But, you know, as a kid, Dad always knew I wanted to go down to the torpedo room. I was like, I want to see the torpedoes. So yeah, joined up as a gunner's mate, and then boy, that is a long story just to get to this other point. Which, you know, hey, if you're long-winded and you like telling stories, you know, tell a story. So yeah, joined up, got through boot camp, then went to what they call A school. And A school is, you can think of it like advanced training in your specialty, in your rate. So, you know, me being a gunner's mate, I was going to go to gunner's A school. And fortunately, I was just right across the street from recruit training. And, you know, that was really cool. And if you graduate with high enough marks in your class, then you can go on to what they call a C school, which is even more specialized courses or coursework in one of the higher, or one of the more advanced weapon systems. So in that case, at our time, it was the Mark 41 VLS system, vertical launch systems. And for any of you who saw the 250th anniversary of the Navy, when the president was, and his and the first lady were on board I think it was the George W. Bush super carrier. Oh, it's terrible. I should know the names of the carriers. Sorry. But you had that destroyer squadron there, and then they were just multi-launching the VLS, which was really freaking cool because that's a rare sight. So yeah, the VLS would have been a C school that you would have been taught that on. And when I went in, my marks weren't as high. My best friend in the Navy, Tennyson, he got to go to the C school, and so he picked the Mark 41 VLS, and I was like, oh, dude, that's cool. But I ended up being a gunner's mate guns, so GMG, and my best friend Tennyson, he went on to become a GMM, gunner's mate missiles. So I don't know what the terms are, or what the rating descriptors are today. They you know, it's been 30 years since I was in, so it may have all changed. But the cool thing is the GMGs, you actually had, I got purple on my hands. You had the larger main gun systems, which for us in the Navy, we only operate small caliber or lightweight gun systems. Let's put it that way. And they're only 3-inch, 5-inch guns. So 76.2 is a 3-inch, 127 millimeter is 5-inch, and in the Navy those are small. Used to be we'd have medium caliber guns going up to 8-inch, 2 or 3s. And the Army had the land-based version of those. And then you had the heavy caliber guns, which back in World War II was like 14 to 16-inch guns. And then later on in the Cold War, with just the Iowa class fast battleships, you had the 16-inch 50 caliber guns. So, a lot of boom. And so you'd have the main guns, and then the other option to that, or sub option, was you could go into small arms. And so that's what I did. Got to play around with everything from everything from sidearms. We still had the M1911s back then, the 45, the Colt 45s, or that's what's called in the civilian world. And we had M14s, M16s. There's M79 grenade launchers, Vietnam era. And when you see where they break the breech open, and you put a 40 millimeter grenade in there, you pop it, you get this thump, it comes out of it. And then up to 50 cals, and we had M60 machine guns and whatnot. The saws hadn't made their way over to the Navy side yet, I think. But that was pretty cool, because those are all the weapon systems that I grew up on seeing in movies. It's kind of funny because you get on to the M16, you're like, oh, the gun of Rambo, and they were pretty cool. There's a lot of history behind those. So, sorry, I get sidetracked a lot. So, get in the Navy, get through gun school, and get deployed. And my ship was in the Persian Gulf. It was with the auxiliary fleet, which are the, today we call it combat logistics, or auxiliary is, it amplifies or augments a particular force, or some sort of element in the military. And so we were deployed out. We were attached to the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Battle Group, CVBGs is what they operated back then. Now the strike groups. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the battle groups, usually if you say battle group, they're trained in, or the combat doctrine is more toward ship-to-ship engagements, and strike groups are more for supporting land-based operations and whatnot. So, and the one thing about military definitions is that you get new admirals, new generals in there, and everybody likes to change everything. And so you get you'll see these arguments between the traditionalists and then the new men and women coming in who are like, I want to invent my own thing. And so I'm really simplifying that, but so back then we had battle groups. I want to make that building taller. Oh well. And so, back then, even though it was the 90s, Gulf War I ended in 91. So, and there were, Saddam was kind of keeping quiet, but occasionally he'd, violate the no-fly zone. The Russians hadn't quite started doing their crazy stuff, because they had, President Yeltsin was a pretty calm guy. He actually had kind of a popular following over here, because he was like, man, we had decades of this Cold War. Let's just try and get along with each other. And so, but getting deployed to the Middle East, that was, you know, it was kind of like today. I was like, oh, okay, right, I guess we're going out there. I was hoping, having picked the Pacific Fleet, the 7th Fleet, which operates in the Pacific, you know, I'd be in Japan or, you know, around Hong Kong, that kind of thing. Hong Kong was still a British colony back then, before they gave it back to CCP and whatnot. So, oops, I guess we'll fall on there. Oh, that's weird. I didn't intend to have that be an angled building like that next to this one. All right, yeah, cool. Yeah, sorry, this is really long-winded. I apologize. So get deployed out there. You know, I could hear the worry in my parents' voice. You know, and my dad, you know, every boy, you know, you love your mother and you don't want to put her through any undue stress, which I did when I signed up. I forgot about that. I didn't tell her, and neither did my dad. And my mom is one of the most amazing women I know. I mean, it includes, you know, the cadre, like my late grandmothers, my aunts, you know, a lot of pretty amazing women that I've met through the years. But my mom, you know, was married to some mariner for you know, a long time. Went through the Cold War as that, you know, young mom at 19. You know, for half the year would be a single mom, you know, in the Navy. And, you know, she'd stay up late, really, really late, just talking to us kids. You know, I was really depressed as a kid. I was never popular, which I'm thankful for now. You know, didn't have the girlfriends. Also real thankful for seeing, you know, teenage drama. It can be something else. But, you know, she would stay up late into the night, just listening to us and talking to us. And, you know, still does. Her and I, you know, we talk, and I need to call her more often. So, any of you out there, if you gotta call your mom, or at least text her, tell her, you know, say, hey, mom, dad, I love you guys. So yeah, my mom told me when I got back, she cried for 3 days. And me being 19 and thinking I know everything, I thought, oh, mom will be totally fine with this. You know, 4 generations of Navy, she, you know, was married to dad. I'm forgetting, well, I'm her baby boy. You know, I'm the firstborn. And, you know, my mom loves all of us kids the same. And boy, was I wrong. And, you know, she's a very wise woman and very passionate. And she didn't tell me that because she knew that would have broken my heart, because that was not my intention. You know, I was trying to be a responsible son and say, hey, I'm trying to get on my own and, you know, be responsible and, you know, become a man and, you know, make my parents proud, my grandparents and, you know, family and stuff like that. And, so get deployed out to the Middle East, and about 2 months in, oh yeah, I got there in October, and it's hot. There's a reason why people are just miserable out there. We flew into Bahrain. I can't remember the name of the airport, but we flew into Bahrain, and we were on a MAC flight. That's a military airlift command, MAC, and as we're flying in country, you can feel the temperature going up in the plane, right? So you're in this 200-ton aircraft or 150-ton aircraft, and we're flying in, and man, it's starting to get hot. When we left the U.S., it was October, so it was cold that year. That was 93, and Mac flight lands. It was a long flight, and they dropped the hatch, or the civilian parlance, the door, and I stepped out and I was like, who parked an aircraft in front of us? Because this blast of heat hits us. Anybody who's been deployed there, probably laughing, going, yeah. And I look around, there's no aircraft. We're the only thing out there. And I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck in hell. And so, no insult to anybody that lives out there. Met some very nice people. One of which was the civilian taxi that we rode in. There's this young man. Now, I hope he's still doing well. Picked us up, and he loved Americans. He loved American music, so he had these mixtapes on cassette. For those of you who don't know what a cassette is, because a lot of people haven't grown up with those. You've probably seen them. It's just basically magnetic tape. It's what we record all of our music on. Much to the chagrin of the radio companies and the record labels. And to our joy, we just record everything out the radio. So he was playing that, and it was a bunch of these cover groups. And you got to be nice. It's like, hey, this guy's at least trying. The music was music. And so yeah, he was pretty nice. But it was really hot though. Oh my gosh, I hate the heat. I love cold weather. I'm a winter and autumn or fall time, person. But I do enjoy a nice sunny day, so I don't want to say I dislike any kind of sunshine. It's definitely not that. If I have a choice, oh man, this building's looking flat. We're gonna fix that. If I have a choice, I'll take cooler weather. A lot of nostalgia around the holidays and stuff like that. But get back on track. So about 2 months in, I started getting really sick and didn't know what was going on. I had a milk intolerance when I joined, but for the most part, I was able to control my diet. It wasn't bad. Lactose intolerance it's typical in Asian kids, or anybody Asian descent. At least that's what we were told, growing up. Medical technology's changed a lot, but I was getting really sick, and eventually I couldn't eat. I had a hard time getting hot water down, and when you're young, you're in the military. One of the things that happens is that you don't want to go to sick bay or medical if you're in the Army or Marines. Sick bay for the Marines too. Sorry. Because there's kind of this, hey, we want to be tough. We don't want to let our teammates down, right? We don't let our shipmates down. And then there's also there can be in certain commands, this peer pressure of like, oh, you better not go. You need to tough it out. If any of you are in the military and you got things you're dealing with, go get them checked out and get them documented. And it's just to help you out later on when you get out, which will become more relevant to this as soon as I stop yammering and getting sidetracked. So I was getting really sick. I had internal bleeding at one point. I was, terrible stomach aches, digestive problems. Then I couldn't concentrate, which is swinging full circle around to it now being about 4 o'clock in the morning. And my not being able to figure out what to draw. And that was frustrating. I was forgetting things. I was not able to focus. All of a sudden, my emotions are all over the place. And I was so sick at one point that we were... Actually, it was two things. I went to go eat in the galley, which is the mess hall, or in the civilian world it knows like cafeteria. So I was in the galley, and I had hot water and rice. For those of you who've been out in the Middle East, if you're, or in the sandbox, if you're, you know, you're working all day, and, you know, as gunners, we're running heavy machinery, you know, all of our ammunition, you know, we're checking magazines. I mean, we're doing a lot of work, and, you know, a normal person should be pretty hungry. One of the cooks came up, and boy, I wish I could remember his name. He was a good man. But he came over and asked me if I was okay, and I get that question a lot. You know, the smaller guys, you know, the bigger guys that check on you, which, you know, that was always kind of nice. It's like big brothers, you know. And I said, well, I said, I haven't been feeling well. I said, I don't know what's going on. He says, yeah. He goes, I've been noticing, you know, the past couple of days, man, you're eating like less and less, and you look really, really pale, and you've lost some weight. I didn't notice that. I was just trying to be able to maintain and do my job, which was getting harder and harder to do. And I had a lot of coffee. That's why I'm shaking. So your lines start doing this. Oh, wait, can you see it? There we go. So I finally went to sick bay. And it was our cook. And then the second incident that caused me to go to sick bay was we were doing what we call, actually, opportunity draw signals. We were doing what we call an UNREP. Oh, pardon me. Yawning again. And that's, UNREP stands for underway replenishment. And let's see, we'll just do this here. So let's say this is a supercarrier. Yeah, all the carrier sailors are like, that's not right. Yeah, I know. Sorry, guys. Okay, you know what? We're gonna make it more of like a futuristic kind of supercarrier, and then we can get away with it not looking quite right. So, and then over here would be what we call a USNS, and USNS stands for United States Navy ship, whereas the warships, your surface combatants, and your subsurface combatants like submarines are USS, so United States ship. USNS ships, they can be armed. Ours was. We were on what was known at the time as a AFS, and AFS was the A stands for auxiliary, and we carried, AFS ships carried a little bit of everything, so they had quite a bit of equipment. And ours was an older ship, it was a Mars class ship, and a USS White Plains, AFS 4. And we had up front, we had these twin Mark 33 twin, holy cow, let me try that again. Twin Mark 33 twin 3-inch rapid fire guns. They're if you look at the end of World War II, a lot of anti-aircraft, the 40 millimeters and stuff like that, were getting replaced by these rapid fire 3-inch guns. And these twin Mark 33s were kind of the pinnacle of that for the manually loaded gun mounts. And but this, yeah, so it was, you know, we had phalanx, and and you know, 50 cals and whatnot. So it was a lot of manually, you know, a lot of small arms and stuff like that. A lot of manual weapon systems. It was pretty cool. But so an UNREP would be, let's see, underway replenishment. So essentially, if you ever look, and you'll see pictures of this, there will be steel cables going across. And I might have some of this wrong. I really need to do my research. In UNREP, you will have logistics supplies being shuttled back and forth along these steel cables. And in addition to that, on the aft end of the ship, there's also, drew that too big. There'll also be, you know, helos. And in this case, they were H-47s, I think we had, which are the tandem rotor. Oh yeah, I drew that totally wrong. Shoot. All right. Futuristic, something different. Or H-46s. I think we had the 47s. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we had the 47s. And they'll be taking supplies across too. So they'll either be in the back of the cargo bay, which would be here, or in some cases, you could have stuff that was underslung. So, but the steel cables here, gunner's mates are in charge of these lines. And when you start the shoot, when you start the underway replenishment evolution, the receiving vessel, which you can have two on each side, you know, you could have a frigate, you know, we'll draw probably a modern frigate, or, you know, whatever the new futuristic modular frigates are going to look like. And so, you know, you could do UNREP on both sides. And the gunners, what we'll do is we'll begin to shoot it's a thin nylon line. If anybody in the future sees this, sailors, please remind me of the difference. We had different terminology for the thickness of the lines that we were shooting. One was line, and then I forget the other name, so I apologize. I'll look that up, and I'll have that next time. So we'd shoot these lines across. You'd have an M14 battle rifle, and you'd have a specialized cartridge, and then you'd shoot this. You'd have like this attachment to the front of the rifle, and you'd shoot this thing across. So it'd just kind of shoot over here, and then catch the line. And then what would happen is you would hook that line up, and then you start threading back and forth with bigger lines until you got these one inch steel cables, or I think they were 1 inch. They might have been bigger than that. And then the auxiliary vessel, or the combat logistics ship, would start to, they'd have motorized pallets and whatnot, and you have essentially not crane operators, but they'd have operators operate these lines, and they send them back and forth. And so inside the ships, you would have, or the auxiliary ships, you know, a lot of space in them. So you'd have pallets stacked up on the deck, and gunners, there'd be a two-man team on each steel line that was going across, because, you know, you're talking about a supercarrier that was anywhere between the Nimitz class. You're talking about anywhere between 88,000 to 120,000 tons of steel displacing the water, and then the auxiliary vessels, they could be anywhere between 30 to 50,000 tons. And you've got, let's draw something here. So your ship, so let's do this. So let's just say side profile, front, and then we'll do this up here for top-down view. So ships, they're not stable in the water. That's something that doesn't really get communicated very well in movies. So a ship, you're going to have your pitch up, your pitch down, and then you're going to have yaw to your port or left, and then you're going to have yaw to your starboard or your right. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Okay, so pitch. So the pitch here. I got those arrows wrong. Okay, so your pitch, your yaw is actually, if we're looking down on the vessel, that's if you're moving laterally. So this would be your yaw. And then this, okay, so let's do it this way. This would be, wow, that arrow looks so bad, sorry. So this would be your roll. So the roll basically means the deck can pitch this, or can roll this way, or can roll this way. Your pitch means that your deck is going to come up, and then your deck is going to go down. Yaw, you know, your ship is shifting to the left, or to the left or to the right, so port or starboard. And these ships are doing all of this, and you're moving at speed, so you have to match your speed. Make sure you keep distant. The helmsmen, they're not called pilots. Sci-fi needs to get that correct. The helmsmen have to maintain a specific distance and speed, and then also you've got the command crew handing down these orders. And these ships are not pitching, yawing, and rolling at the in sequence. They could be moving apart, yawing apart. They could be pitching at different times. It could be subtle, but when you've got these steel cables and you're hauling tons of cargo back and forth, that becomes an issue. So the gunner's mates, you're gonna have a steel cable, right? And you've got a lot of shipmates running around the deck of the ship, loading up. They're bringing out pallets of supplies. You got people, safety checking things. You've got communication going back and forth between you and the receiving ship. And our job as gunners was to watch these steel lines. And you're watching steel lines like a hawk. And you have at least back in the day when I was in, you had this steel block. This is a line cutter. Actually, sure, I'll draw a little bit smaller. So we had a line cutter, and it was on about a 10-foot pole, metal pole. This line cutter had a .45 caliber charge in it, and that was behind a very thick, very sharp razor. Those steel cables, the thing in the Navy is line snapback. Is nobody wants to go through that. This is one of the worst things you can have happen. Not the worst, but it's right up there. These cables are under an incredible amount of tension. That's because you've got massive energy loads being dropped onto the cables because of these, multi-kiloton ships, moving through the water. So our jobs as gunners is to watch these lines. If the lines started to go, which you would know it'd start to unravel and you could hear it. Actually, you can hear everything going. You can hear the steel plates and whatnot, but it's steel lines. If these were to go, one man or one gunner would take this box, and you would, let's say, I'm going to over-exaggerate the size of this cable, but you would take this box, put it on the cable, grab the end of that pole, And at the same time you're doing this, you're telling, actually before that, you're telling the crew to clear the deck because there's an emergency. I forget what the exact command was. The gunner here would grab that pole and both of you would run. And when this detonates, because this cable's already going to go, it's being stretched here, and if the ships are rolling, pitching, yawing, that's also dropping an additional energy load onto the line. Well, the line's already compromised at this point. You detonate that line. When it goes, guaranteed it's gonna smash things, including steel plates and, you know, people. So the second thing that motivated me to go to sickbay was we were doing UNREP. I think it was for Theodore Roosevelt. And I was really, really sick. And I had to go relieve this pain by going to the head. Head's what we call the bathroom. Or restroom. And I left my partner there. My shipmate. Fellow gunner. So that was really heavy on my mind, and I did not like that at all. And I knew I was compromised as far as my effectiveness goes. When you're a sailor, you want to get to fleet because that's where you join. You know, you're in the Navy. I mean, unless you're a SEAL or whatnot, you know, or you know, you have a shore-based rate that's, you know, it's necessary for you to be on shore. But for most sailors, it's, you know, you want to get to fleet. I mean, I was a gunner's mate. I wanted to get to fleet. That was, for me, that was important. So maybe I shouldn't say all sailors, but, you know, I was there. But I also knew I had to perform this very specific job. And, you know, you can't be compromised like that. So he was there by himself, which it's always supposed to be a two-man team. So I went to sickbay. You know, finally gave in. I was like, yeah, I better go. This is bad. And they medevaced me off the ship. And I was in a hospital in Bahrain. I was in one in Germany. You know, the entire time they're trying to figure out what's going on. You know, why is this sailor sick? And then, you know, I got stateside, come to find out there were more people that were sick as well. At the time, they didn't have a name for Gulf War illness. Probably mumbled that, but so Gulf, like the Persian Gulf, war illness. And it's just kind of a name that they assigned to it. Back then they called it Gulf War syndrome. Now they call it Gulf War illness. So, yeah, it ultimately what it ended up doing is cutting my tour duty short, my deployment. And it sucked. I mean, it'd be lying if I said I wasn't happy to be able to go back and see family. But it was a bummer, you know. And yeah, pretty much mission killed my tour of duty. So you know, mission kill just means to be rendered ineffective. You'll hear that like when you talk about armor combat, you know, tanks and whatnot, which eventually at some point we will get to. But yeah, that happened. And last count, I think there's about 40, 50 different things I deal with. One of them is concentration, which you can tell by this video or any of the videos you watch, because I'm rambling all over the place. The other is your emotional ups and downs, right? You have to, you really got to stay on top of that. And because you can have outbursts, you know, and then later on you're apologizing, but you're thinking in your head like, I have no idea why I did that. And I've had a lot of great bosses and coworkers who have been far more understanding than I deserve. And you know, so when I was sitting here at 3 in the morning, which is now 4:30 in the morning, I'm a night owl, so I'm actually enjoying this. I can't wait till I can do this full time and, you know, have the late hours. But for now, got to be responsible and make sure I'm at work on time. It's been really tough on days, because you'll sit there and it's like, okay, I want to get these things done. I want to, I have, a world that I'm building, which I'm going to go into that will be one of the series of videos, the world building, and talk about lore masters and all that fun stuff we love to geek out about. And those are the things, it's what I've always really wanted to do. I love world building. I love science fiction. I love ships, and the machinery, especially mecha design, is like my big time passion. I love it all. I want other people to be able to love it all, and tell their fellow geeks and nerds, hey, this is we're the cool people. It's totally fine to enjoy this. And like I've stated in the other videos, the other two that are up now, is I want to encourage people too. And when you have those times when you're like, man, I just don't feel motivated, or I can't figure out what to do. In case if you're doing content creation, or you're just you're not doing that, and you just you're drawing, you're trying to figure out something to write, just start drawing, start writing, scribble. I mean, look at this thing. I have no idea what that is, but it's some sort of concrete structure, I think. Start writing just random things, anything pops in your head. Read your favorite book, or it might be going and getting a coffee, or it could be, you have your favorite tree that you like to go sit by. Maybe it's a bookstore. You have that window seat, overlooks everything. It starts raining out, you get a hot drink. It could be any number of things, right? So can we see that? Okay, cool. I gotta look at my recording off my phone. Oh, sorry if I'm shaking a lot. Probably am. Yeah, just just start. Kind of like one of the things popped in my head right now is like a train station. I love trains. That's my other passion I've always had. I want to get back into model trains as well. I think Z scale is what I'm going to go with, or N scale. I love anything miniature. Especially models and stuff. This is why I got into wargaming. But just start. I mean, it's those days it's going to be frustrating. Where you're like, I just don't know what to do. Nothing's working out right. But take a deep breath, take a step back, and something I try to do is, for me as a Christian, I try to thank the Lord that, hey, I can still drive, use of my hands, and, still walk around, still run, things like that. Challenges here and there, but, one of the things I'm thankful for is I'm, still, clarity of mind to where I can, or enough to where I can, just be able to figure out how to try to operate, with all these crazy challenges that come around. I mean, life's not easy, but you find a way through it, right? You can't control the things externally that happen to you, but you can control how you can decide how you're going to react to them. That's a lot of what I'm learning right now. Learning a lot of old lessons that I grew up with, and learning new lessons too. Everybody's a student. Nobody knows everything. If they claim they do, they're they are lying to you. But yeah, thankfully I get to create. I can still draw. Been able to work out more now, which is really nice, because I had a long period of time where, man, everything hurt. Joint and muscle pain is nothing you deal with. And yeah, everything really hurt for a while. And I changed a lot of things on my diet, and a lot of things I can't eat now, which, yeah, it's a bummer on one end, but on the other, I can work out again. It's great. I mean, it's not to full ability like what I used to do. Although my goal is to work back up to that. And oh yeah, this is supposed to be a train yard. We will put some railroad ties here. So yeah, this is a very, very long way of saying, if you're struggling, just having, it may not even necessarily be art. It could just be life in general. Close your eyes, take a breath, metaphorically take a step back, kind of take things in, and, you do an assessment, right? It's like, okay, still breathing. I have these things to be thankful for. As artists, you can still draw, you can still write. Yeah, I got artist block, I got writer's block. But it's not forever, right? And for myself, I hope this will help somebody. I'm gonna put a tree right here, as Bob Ross would say, a happy little tree. Love Bob Ross. Me and my late grandfather, who was on my dad's side, he was an artist also. Both my grandfathers inspired me to become an artist. We used to sit and watch Bob Ross on PBS when he was on, and that was really cool, And I like Bob Ross because he's a very generous, well-meaning man who, and fellow artist, and veteran too, who just wanted to teach people the joy of being able to create, and that, what, everybody can learn. But man, I was going somewhere with that. I'm gonna look back at this video and go, oh yeah, I didn't finish that point. So, oh, that's what it was. For myself personally, one of the things I'm trying to make sure I do is work on my self-discipline. And I know as an artist, we're always just like, ugh, that word, or that phrase. But these are art disciplines that we're doing, and we love learning about these art forms, right? These art disciplines, whether it's writing, drawing, acting, music, painting, photography, mecha design, architecture. There's a lot of art disciplines. Don't let anybody fool you. There's a lot more out there than has been described. And for myself, if I just try to go purely off of motivation, right? Which wouldn't we all love to just have motivation 100% each day? But the reality is we don't always have it every single day, and and what helps us to get our stuff done in our art disciplines and studying it is the self-discipline part, right? So it's like, pardon me, you may not feel the motivation on a particular day, but developing that discipline that says, okay, you know what, I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to have a plan in place, which I did not in this case. And that plan is going to be to work on my artwork anyways. Even if I don't know what to do, I don't know what the artist block is, I'm just going to work on it because that's what I want to do. And it helps, as I'm discovering tonight at nearly 5 in the morning. So, you know, if you find yourself in that situation, you know, I hope that this will help. You know, I hope it'll encourage somebody. It's like, just, you know, yeah, take a step back. You know, if you're drawing, you hit the artist block. You know, turn around, write something, or just, you know, break out a sketch pad and sketch, or you know, something else that'll help. I should have done this. Is look at the portfolios of your favorite artists. You know, the people that inspire you. Find the interview of, you know, conceptual designer or some artist that you admire who, you know, talks about, here was my process and, you know, this project, and, you know, something that you just, you know, you love to watch. You know, don't stop. You know, it's real easy for us to go, man, I suck, you know, so I can't get this done, I'm not a real artist. It's like, you know, reality is we all deal with this, so you're not alone. You know, none of us are alone. And, you know, it's a nice feeling. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's a normal struggle. You know, doesn't mean I suck as an artist. I guess I could have done like a modern walkway or something like that. Yeah, so just, you know, don't give up. You know, no matter what you're doing, don't give up. It's easy to give up, you know. And I know it's just like you can hear somebody say that, and it's like, oh yeah, but, you know, it's easy to say. You're right. You're right. But I didn't want to remain silent. You know, I want to encourage people, so it means that I got to say something. Because life it's more enjoyable when you have something fun to look at. You know, universe to dive into. I always like these things with trains. They're fun. Let's see, why don't we put a mega city in the back? Because mega city. This is something fun you can do too if you ever want to try to put a city in the background and you're like, oh, I don't want to draw all the detail for every single building, so you can do this. Let's switch over to this Bic. I wasn't always a fan of Bic pens, but I really like these. So the thing you can do is on the background, this actually looks really cool in black ink too. I love the color purple, though. So you can just do this, just take and shade in the back. You can totally shade in the back too. I mean, you can go solid color. I just like this aesthetic of like single lines. Or you can even cross hatch it too if you wanted to. Yeah, and then just take and fill in the buildings like this. And if you're a perfectionist, which I get, you can take a ruler and do the lines individually all the way across. Oh, good. Okay, we'll do that. And what's fun is you can look at this afterwards, and you have, oh yeah, I guess I should fill that back there. And then when you're done, you have a city in the background, and you just had to shade it in. So it's kind of fun. Yeah, so I should probably get some sleep because I got to work today. So what I'm going to do, and I hope this will help other people, you know, lead by example, right? So I'm going to go to work, finish my shift, and I come home, and I will film the first of a multi-part series or library. I haven't decided what to call it yet. I guess we'll say series. That's what everybody's familiar with. Of one of the mini series I want to do. I'm playing several, so it's going to be mecha design, warships, or ships. Let's say space opera. Yes, mecha design, space opera, cyberpunk, world building. There'll be fan art in there too, because there's some content creators I really like, and they're fans of certain sci-fi ship series, and so I think it'd be fun to draw some fan art and then send it to them. What was the other? There's some other. A couple other categories, a couple other series I want to do, and with the mecha, that's what it was. With the mecha design, space opera, and cyberpunk. Cyberpunk will center mainly around, like, you know, kind of mega city aesthetics and whatnot. Those are going to have tutorials, or what I'll call builds. Tutorials. There'll be lore, and then there will be the technical side, which will be like, you know, all the, for us gearheads, all the stats. You know, it weighs this much, it's this fast, it's, you know, has this much armor plating, has this much boom, because, you know, you can never have enough boom or pew pew. And yeah, so that's the plan. And then, oh, that was the other series, the one I was just talking about. Yeah, concentration. It's going to be, let's see, military alphanumeric identification designator system. So that's essentially going to tell you, actually, let's give a quick example before I close out. So let's go up here. So it'll be like if you have, say, we're going to make up a carrier here. Let's say this is CVN 93, right? What should we name it? You know what? Let's, oh gosh, let's call it the Lexington. Proper carrier name. One of our traditional ones. So CVN 93 Lexington, right? And then you have other things like, see, you've got the F-16. I don't know what the current variant is. I'm going to pick one. Let's just say the F-16's been around for even longer. So we'll call it the F-16 G. Okay, and then if you ever look at them, at aircrafts, you'll have things like, let's call this a Block 107, which which means these are really, really old or really updated. So this series coming up is going to, oh, you know, I should include some ground armor too. Sorry, guys. So you got the M1, A3, SEP, V, let's say 4. We'll just add something. We'll add a bunch of stuff in there. So what the series coming up with the military designations is this going to, my goal is to basically help everybody understand why, or help everybody understand how to do this, what all of this stuff means. And then it'll get into ship types like, you know, this is a fleet carrier. So let's say CVF, right? Which, and then you have light carriers. You know, here you have an auxiliary supply ship. You know, this over here is an FFG, or, you know, you could have other things like, let's say we have a heavy destroyer, you know, DDH. And then you get, you know, the battleships and battle cruisers and armored cruisers and things like that. So that whole series will basically, the goal is to help people understand how to do this and then understand what all this information is, so they can, as lore masters, they can decipher what they're reading, you know, depending on the series or how detailed a series is. If they have something where, you know, the creators of a series didn't really know what to call things, then they can kind of, you know, the lore masters can kind of try to figure out, you know, based on, you know, real world examples, which is fun to do. Or if they have a series that's really detailed, then then, you know, they can understand this. For world builders, it's the same thing. It's to have a foundation of saying, okay, this is what the real world examples are. I can now take that and build off of that and create my fictional world where my names are completely different, my designations are completely different, you know. And yeah, so that's the goal. And so, yeah, expect a video tomorrow. I hope, I don't know how long it'll be, but that's the goal. And if you're, you know, again, if you're feeling discouraged, you know, don't feel alone and don't give up. All right. You know, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and take a step back, assess everything, and just, you know, keep going. Just start, even if you don't know where to start. And we'll all go on this journey together and just build some worlds, and we'll see where we go. So, yeah, you know, everybody take care, and you guys have a good day. All right, love everybody. See ya. Bye.